Welcome to Find 'em, everyone. This is the State of Hiring and Recruiting webinar series, and our first edition today will focus on what will drive efficiencies in 2023. We'll give you a few minutes to get started while everyone joins the room. Great to see you, Chris. We're going to get started in a few minutes here, just giving folks time to get settled.
Thanks, Karen. Folks, I'm having some technical difficulties. I don't know if there's more foreign balloons floating over blocking all the internet access around Texas or not, but having some technical challenges here.
Great. Yeah. So we'll give Chris a couple moments. Karen, great question. I see that in the QA. Can we have any presentations documents emailed to us? So after the presentation today, we will send out an email link in next week. So look for that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, early part of next week with a link to the presentation. Also, just so folks know, this is a presentation of the findings in our report, and that's available for everyone to download. Great. And so why don't we go ahead and get started with a couple of housekeeping items. It's great to see so many people here today, and this is Find 'em. We're going to be going over our State of Hiring and Recruiting report and focus in on what will drive efficiencies in 2023. If you have any questions, please pop those into the Q&A, and we will answer those as we at the end. We'll save some time for Q&A, and if anything pops up that we can answer right away, we'll take care of that as well. So thank you so much for joining us. We are super excited to present this information. I'm Karen Henke, Head of Growth Marketing at Find 'em. I head up all of our research and content creation. The Find 'em platform is an unmatched people intelligence platform that gives you deep data insights that is transforming the way our customers hire. So we're very excited. That's our little commercial from Find 'em, and now we'll get into the content that you're all excited and here to see. So we're very thrilled to have Chris Galley here to present with me and kind of respond to the outcomes that we found. Hey, Chris, great to see you. Chris is currently a talent strategy consultant with Talent Lucidity, and he comes from Couchbase, where he was the chief people officer, seeing the company through an IPO. And right now he's working as a consultant, also helping Find 'em as chief evangelist. He's also founded the Talent Crux community, a group of talent leaders, and he's an advisor to Project Legion, which is focused on helping veterans find and helping companies hire veterans. And Chris himself is a veteran as well. Chris, would you like to say hi?
Bandwidth permitting, of course. Hi, everybody. Great to have you here today. This is a really good set of data, but it's the conversation that's going to be even more important. And I know that there's only so much interaction we could have, but we've opened up the chat for different Q&A, and we're going to try to address as many things that's top of mind as possible today.
Great. Well, let's dive right into the report. So Find 'em and KarmaCheck are the sponsors of this report. It was conducted by Pure Spectrum. We had over 300 US talent leaders surveyed in November 2022. So it's a little, times are changing super fast. So hopefully this will still make sense today. But in terms of the respondents, about 54% were from companies of 1,000 employees and over, and 34% were in the VP position or above. We also found significant higher findings in the areas of healthcare, tech, and financial services industries. If you'd like to download a copy of the report, simply go to findem.ai/trends and you can get it there. Great. Well, what we found really is that the state of hiring and recruiting is dynamic. We see so much change happening right now. And that really goes to the rapidly changing workforce that's creating this volatile economy and really putting a lot of pressure on the HR teams. We also see that HR leaders are getting this pressure from above to prove their value to the executive leadership. And they're really having a tough time setting achievable goals that then they can be measured on and show that value. The result of all of this is this combination of really high stress and high burnout at all levels. We're seeing churn and change at all levels of the organization. And finally, we're kind of, the hopeful note here is that, so what are you going to do to change all of this? And we see that HR teams are really looking to increase efficiency and effectiveness of their processes and technology. So Chris, what do you think? Is it dynamic? Is this your perception of the current state as well?
Yes, I mean, and it's everything that I experienced with a pandemic, with all the things going on across the globe, with the, whether we're calling it a recession or not, there's certainly a downturn. So there's a lot on human resources plate, and there's a lot of challenges that were brought in with the war for talent and increasing compensation. So there's just been this pickup of things and challenges associated with the practice of human resources. And that was one of the things that we validated in our Talent Crux community meeting, is that and most of these folks have seen many downturns in their career, but across the board, this one felt different than other times. And so, recognizing that, hey, this is super, super challenging times, but also it's the times that's more opportunistic for human resources that have their seat at the table.
Absolutely. Well, let's dive into our first finding. And that was 71% of respondents shared with us that they felt they had missed a key hire, primarily due to inefficient processes. And so when we dove into that to see, why did candidates who received an offer not accept it, that number was pretty high. And top of the list is interview scheduling issues. But if we really kind of dive in and look at these, what we're seeing is that, it's time, it's the lag in the process, it's the inefficiency in terms of working with the hiring managers. So I'm curious, from your perspective, Chris, does this ring true to you? Do you feel like this is more of a case now than it has been in the past?
I think this is one of those things that has always been true and will always be true unless we find ways to define processes, get more deliberate about measuring those processes, defining who owns what in that process, and having mutual accountability. I mean, I went back and looked at a fishbone analysis on this very topic from a couple of companies ago, and it's all the same stuff, and it's people not sure on what their role in a process is, too many interviewers, job descriptions not accurate enough. There's lots of things that are within our control that continue to make hiring a little bit more challenging than it needs to be, which makes the cycle time longer, which increases the chance of a bad experience for candidates.
Absolutely. I think that candidate experience is something that we're seeing pop up and people paying more attention to, especially with the kind of generational changes. And I think from the pandemic, the changes in what people expect from companies. So I think we see that cropping up in many different ways. We do have a couple questions that popped up that I can answer right away. We do have about 80 people present on the call, and I know we have quite a few more who've signed up to get the recording. And then in terms of the feedback, this study was corporate talent leaders, so from companies of sizes 200 and above, and everyone who responded was responsible in some ways for technology acquisition and technology use. So it is not recruiters and agencies, but that's a great question for clarification. So in terms of those inefficient processes, also, we'd love to throw that out to the group and ask the question, what are the top 3 inefficiencies in your hiring process? And if you want to pop that into the Q&A, we'll tally up those results and share that out to the group. But in the meantime, we'll go on to kind of our next big finding here. And that is, we asked, so given these challenges and this desire, this need to prove the value of HR and the people function to the executive leadership, we asked against which hiring and recruiting metrics are leaders most frequently setting goals. And not too surprising here, cost per hire was the number 1, significantly larger than all of the others, followed by average time to fill. And what's interesting here too is when we broke this down by industry, tech HR leaders actually had time to hire as their go-to above cost per hire. So that's actually where kind of that softness in why it's not higher than 73%. It was really the tech HR leaders. We all know that there's been a lot of change in the tech industry, so perhaps that has changed. However, it is of interest here. Controlling costs remains the top of what matters most. And then in the tech industry, it's really time to hire. What are your thoughts on this, Chris?
Yeah, look, a lot's changed since November. And with the pressures in the market, especially for publicly traded companies, everybody's looking to do more with less. I'm sure that's not just in publicly traded companies. Over the past several years, the great thing about from when I first started in the industry, where this new thing called an applicant tracking system just came out, there's been a proliferation of great technologies. Many of them, and most of them nowadays, are all SaaS based, and so they're quick and easy to acquire, get up and running. And I think we've probably done a little bit too much acquisition without gaining the benefit of each one of those. And they all serve the specific need at the time. But I think we have to stop the SaaSness madness. That's my term. I'm coining it. And there's opportunities for efficiencies there for sure.
Absolutely. I think we also saw, yes, I think Paul had a comment that these aren't really metrics. These are metrics, not goals. I think what we were asking is, what metrics are you using? Are you setting goals against? So that's a great question. It's a little bit of a refinement. But I think that what we also hear from a lot of folks is this notion that maybe there was this goal to get people in, and there was such pressure that there was a lot of, like you said, acquisition of technology that maybe today folks are starting to ask, like, is this really working for us, and what can we do to make it more effective and efficient? So that kind of brings us to our next one, which is kind of similar to the last, but did setting those goals against those metrics, did you hit them? And not surprisingly, people did have a tough time hitting that cost per hire goal, especially at the VP and above level. But average time to fill is also a goal that folks are having trouble meeting, and even filling those open roles. So we are still seeing quite a bit of challenge kind of hitting goals that you're measuring. And so I think let's maybe talk a little bit about what that means for talent leaders.
A lot of people always say quality of hire and how do you measure it. It's one of the ongoing and interesting debates, honestly. And I've always answered it. The quality of your hire is about the quality of your process and how you measure the process, because every organization is going to have a different set of goals or KPIs. I mean, essentially, it's what are those things that you're measuring to make sure that your engine's running effectively and efficiently. In the tech world, we go effectively first, and efficiently in most times it's secondary. Of course, that's changed a little bit in the most since November, since this survey was answered. But you're going to have to do both regardless, and they are complementary, 51-49, in some cases 49-51. But it is one of those things where you have to be always diligent, always cognizant. When it's really hard to find people, we're always looking to find that silver bullet that nobody else has. And many times it works, and most times it works in a very short term and not the long term. So you look for another one. But it's a constant iteration. It's a constant analysis of what's working and what isn't. And, in the human space, even though, Findem is a sophisticated tool, AI-driven tool, and it brings a lot of capabilities that will drive efficiencies and effectiveness in your organization. This is not a business that machines are going to take over anytime soon. They're going to be helpful in making data-driven decisions, and they're going to be helpful in driving efficiencies. But if you don't have your processes documented, then you really don't have anything to measure against. If you don't have the right measurements and KPIs, then it's going to be hard to continue to get the funding to build those efficiencies inside of your process. So, Karen, hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, and I think that brings it to the point also of like, how are you measuring this in a comprehensive way? So I think one of the things we also talked about is, what is the problem? Like, why are you unable to hit those goals? And the number one, like you just talked about, the hiring and the recruiting processes are really what seem to be people focusing on the problem here, rather than sort of there aren't enough people or we can't find the people. It does seem to be more around this technology issue. But let's talk a little bit about what people believe technology can and should be doing for them, so that we understand a little bit more about that. So in terms of what technology could be used for hiring and recruiting, I see kind of two things popping up here, and it seems to be around the volume of candidates, getting people in and getting the right people in. So do you see that technology is working well in these areas? Was this working for you in your last position?
Volume is one of those double-edged swords. It's been one extreme or the other in the majority of the 25 plus years I've been in the business. And so it's either we don't need any and we got all these people interested, or we need a lot and we can't find anybody that's interested, especially in some of the higher skilled roles. Or you're in a situation where it might be a higher volume type setup where you have a lot and you just need to know who the good ones are, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's where technology can really come in, and technology like Findem's can help you on both sides of that spectrum, for sure. And there are different ways to build efficiencies depending upon what parts of your process you're trying to build efficiencies in. If it's the end-to-end process, and that's where a lot of people are, they sometimes look towards technology come in, solve all of it, where you should be kind of looking at bite-sized chunks that you could go after. Go for the critical few that you're going to solve for, and then run some small scoped experiments to make sure that you could do it before you expand full circle. So this is one of those isms in our industry. Like, there just isn't enough amazing talent that wants to work for you and your company, that are just waiting to be plucked, and all they needed was your call to do it. This is hard work and hard business, and this is part of the frustrating pieces of, why isn't recruiting, why isn't hiring easier than it seems like it should be?
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about asking people to change a job, and we all spend the majority of our day during the week working. It's a huge commitment for people. It's not so simple as just matching a resume to a job description. I mean, that just feels like such a tiny. I was thinking about the other day, it's sort of like looking through a fogged glass into a room. Like, you don't quite know what's on the other side. You don't quite know if you're going to fit in. So I think it is probably some combination of technology and then also really great people who can have those strong conversations to figure out, and make someone feel comfortable with that change. I think also maybe one of the things we've talked about a lot is, where are you looking for those people, and how are you cultivating them? So, not just looking outbounding and trying to convince someone to come into your organization, but tapping into all the resources of people who already know and maybe have been interested in your organization, making sure that you're talking to those folks as well, and even cultivating those relationships around, in marketing, we do a lot of cultivating folks to help them feel comfortable with our company and our brand. And it seems like that's a direction that companies are starting to move in as well.
Most definitely. And that's, I've seen that in the Find a product around the talent communities and the nurture campaigns with the CRM. And this is where, a lot of people are looking at this downturn. If you haven't been through a downturn, I fully understand how you're feeling like the wheels are falling off the car and how could this be? And there's only been things moving up and to the right for the last 18 years. Well, those of us who have been in several recessions and several downturns, the dot-com bubble bursting, we've seen some of this before, and it's never easy. So we could validate that it's never easy, but the right mindset is to validate that times are kind of jacked up, that you're going to be asked to do more with less, but there's also opportunity for leverage. There's opportunity to get people really focused on the right things. There's opportunity for reflection now that we're not having to deliver more than what was in the workforce plan all the time, to relook, to reprioritize and re-engage the team on some things that are going to move the needle once things pick back up, because it's not that far away, I don't believe. I think pretty soon we're going to be back to the opposite side of too many roles and not enough candidates. And so the question is, how can we be strategic? How can we be thoughtful? How can we look at the things that we have, processes, technology stacks, and the people, and make sure that we're moving along a path that's going to be more conducive to reasonably paced growth in the near future?
I love that. I think I share your optimism that, we don't quite know what's ahead, but for those of us who've been through this before, the present today is not necessarily what's on the horizon tomorrow. So I think change is really the thing we can count on the most. And I'm optimistic that, we'll be bouncing back sooner rather than later.
But one of the first places to really start looking are those higher, more administrative tasks, or the things that if you could have a machine do for you, for instance, instead of going to 7 different places to search for candidates, how about just going to one? How about stack ranking for the candidates? How about having a diversity filter that tells you what the inclusiveness of your pipeline is? Not only that, but being able to tell you where those people are dropping out. And so there's technology out there, from everything from coordination assistance, through insights and metrics and funnelology, as I'd like to say, plus incredible AI-driven search that is attributes-based and skills-based. And I think we're going to talk a little bit more about this, but there's 2 things that I've found that makes Find them really, really super powerful and unique. The fact that the profiles, the way that the search and the profiles work together, those profiles are so strong that you could do a lot of things with those profiles, way more than just searching for candidates. And the second thing is it breaks down everything into attributes and skills. And that's where everything's moving. Everything's moving to, instead of looking at degrees of what schools people went to, what life skills do they have? What accomplishments do they have that show us that they could be successful at our company? What are the soft, what are the hard, what are the human skills associated with doing the work at your company? And that's one of the unique elements that Find them brings to the table for sure.
Right. I think that you kind of mentioned AI, and that's certainly been the technology that's been on everyone's mind recently. And so I think it's worth it for us to dive in a little bit there and see what the survey results were around AI recruiting. And like you said, I think what is super important is, how do we get beyond resumes and how do we get beyond resumes and these sort of simplified job descriptions that, even when you apply to a job and you look at it, you're not really sure what exactly you're getting yourself into. So is there a way for AI and using much more data to kind of enhance these processes? And thanks, Paul. for your questions and your comments. I really appreciate that. And anyone else, if you'd like to pop something into QA, feel free. But what I see is that Paul is saying that with AI sourcing, his recruiters have 25% more time on the phone, which is really great to hear, because that's where you're, like Chris said, you're using the technology to make people more effective and giving them more time to spend in human-to-human interactions. So in terms of AI, we found that about 80% of respondents said they had some AI-enabled technology in their stack. So that was really interesting. It does seem like a lot of companies are using it in many different ways. And of those, how is it specifically helping with their efficiency? And what we saw is that it's more efficient sourcing for sure, plus expanding the team's reach without adding to it. And that jumps up to 73% for VP and above. So that was a really important one, where, trying to get more out of that team and let those people be more engaged in the conversations that they need to be having. And obviously increase the speed of the hiring process. What I thought was kind of interesting here is I think everybody assumes that AI is going to help automate repetitive tasks, but our actual users didn't find that was the primary area. So maybe you can share a little bit more about where you think that AI can really have that impact, Chris.
Well, I mean, search is the big one. I think if you could, like Paul, if we could free up 25% more time of our recruiters' time and our sourcers' time, there's lots of different things that we could, more productive things that we could leverage that time for. One of the things that when I was running TA at Intuit several moons ago, we did a study on all of the tools and systems from beginning of a search to, person starting, that a recruiter would actually touch. And, if you throw the LinkedIns and some of the job boards that you log into to go search, and your own internal tool sets, and it stacked up to be 25 different systems. Of course, that included some background investigation tool. But on any given day, if you really look at where recruiters spend their time, they're touching your ATS, they're touching LinkedIn, they're touching 3 or 4 other tools for sure. They're doing LinkedIn Recruiter, probably. They're doing or leveraging a CRM. They're doing lots of different things and lots of different systems. And one of the things that I find unique, and it's the first time that I've seen, and it was a dream of mine, was a system like Findem that could actually condense many of those systems that a recruiter has to go in and do most of their work in a single solution. And that's what I've found Findem to be. And so when you think about those efficiencies, let me give you a perfect example. One of the things that Findem does, if you have ATS rediscovery, it actually connects to your ATS and updates all of the profiles in your ATS automatically. So you're not looking at that resume that was 3 years old, and then you have to go out to LinkedIn to see what that person's been doing for the last 3 years to see if they're an eligible candidate. That's one of the ways that you could just make the lives of our recruiters, and in some cases, the lives of our managers, because it's the managers doing a lot of the recruiting. It just makes everything way more efficient. Then you have more time for actually delivering better candidate experiences. And still to this day, the majority of people that I talk to who are on the candidate side say 2 things. Number one, nobody ever gets back to me. Or number 2, somebody got to me. I had this great conversation. They said they would get back to me, and they didn't get back to me. And you can see it all over Glassdoor reviews and everything else. And so, where do you, because it is a finite set of resources that you have. And so it's really about where is the best investment to really drive the most progress. And again, this is a time of reflection, and now's a time to really sit back and think of these things, because we have a little bit of ability to do that.
Yeah, and I think we have a couple really interesting questions regarding that, Chris. And I think that being able to log into fewer places, shall we say, to get the tasks done. I think I'll kind of throw a couple ideas out there. I think another component to that is making sure the data between those systems is connected together. And you kind of touched on this in terms of refreshing resumes, or even, I think, creating more enriched profiles beyond just what someone puts into how someone describes themselves. Because let's face it, some people are better at describing themselves than others. Some people are better at making more out of what they have than they should. And, many of us apply to the wrong job. So, there's just this complete mismatch in that data. And so maybe we can talk a little about the data.
Yeah.
And then I do want to get to the question that we've got in here about connecting tools together and using AI for that. I'm not sure AI is quite the solution for that. I think it's an integration management, but maybe if we talk a little bit about how AI can be used to kind of find the secrets in the data.
Yeah. So the first one is really all about the power of skills and attributes based search. This is as recruiters early on, we were always taught, get your leaders to screen in versus screening out. And that's actually one of the hardest things, because when you sit down in front of the job rec opens, the manager's already frustrated because they've been working with finance to get the job open for 2 months already. So in their mind, the recruiting process has already started 2 months ago. Then you sit down with them and they tell you the things behind the job description, like, oh, I want them to be from, these 5 competitive companies, and I want them to have worked specifically on these things. And you know what? Since we're a pre-IPO company, I want that pre-IPO company experience, because they need to be scrappy and wear multiple hats. But at the same time, we're scaling fast, and I need that public company experience too. I need them to, be at scale. And if they were at these 2 companies at this particular time, and they happen to be a great team player, and the preferably diverse candidate pools, and all the way down. And so this is one of the reasons why we're working on Project Legion, projectlegion.org, powered by Findem, which is, how do you take people who are coming out of the military and they have all of these great skills that they don't know how to talk about, and companies don't know how to look for, because they're not at competitive companies with that same job title that you're looking for. And that is the crux behind all diversity and inclusion hiring. So we used to say, seek potential, and we could get you up to speed and running on all the other things. But people don't really do that in today's fast-paced, just-in-time hiring type of environment. So being able to search on attributes and skills can get you to the point where it opens up the door to a lot more candidates than just a job description or a manager's long list of purple squirrel criteria. The beautiful thing about the data behind it is that you could sit there with a manager and find them, and you could put all of those attributes in and then show them how small of a pool that actually ends up becoming when you look at all of those different skills. And then you could work them back up to being reasonable. So that first set is about skills and attributes, and the power of that skills and attributes search, screening people in versus screening people out. The second piece was around AI. And I think you have to think about tools like Findem, especially Findem. Findem is really like a really strong BI platform that uses AI and other chat GPT in some places, and other leading edge technologies that build efficiencies and to make the product even that much better. And so when you think about integrating other tools into with Findem, we work with a lot of standard APIs. It connects with most ATSs out there, and if we don't have a direct connection, we could work with you on it. And the other thing is, all my life, all I wanted was just to see the pipeline all the way from outreach to hire. And so then I could work my funnelology, and I could see where all of my efficiencies are occurring or not occurring. I could redistribute my assets if I see, blockages in certain parts of the process, to make sure that we go in and clean out some of those places where we're seeing blockage. So at the core, Findem is a just really wicked smart BI platform with great technology to make it an efficient way to put not all, but a lot of, especially on the sourcing, especially on the source to hire process, into a single pane of glass, where not only can your recruiters do most of their work there, but you could get the reports that you need that you never could get before.
Thank you, Chris. I think that's a really key point about how AI is used and why that's so critical in terms of where we want to go today. And we did put that link into the chat, but that's projectlegion.org. So I'm looking at our questions. We have one more slide. Why don't we go to that last slide? Because I think that's a great kind of sum up of where we are. And then we'll go back and address these questions one by one. So let's just go to this last slide. And I think we talked a little bit about this, that none of us has a crystal ball. We don't know what the future is. You know, some economists say we're in for a long, slow bounce back. Others say we should be bouncing back by the end of this summer. So like you've been talking about, you know, the most important thing to do right now is to think about, how do you recalibrate for the future? What changes could you make to the process that maybe you've been looking at for a long time, but you've been just too busy and too swamped to really dig into? So you know, the title of this is Driving Efficiencies. So Chris, I'd love for you to talk about these kind of 4 points we came up with around driving those efficiencies for tomorrow.
Yeah. Karen, can you read those off? Because I'm a little bit limited with my technological challenges here.
Yeah. So let's say number one, get the internet to work everywhere. Oh, wait, no.
Yeah. Yes, that'd be helpful.
So let's say leverage AI powered tools for efficiency and scale. And I think we've talked a bit about this, but do you have anything else to add on that one?
Yeah, well, there's a when you have such a tool with such powerful profiles on over 750 million people, you could do a lot with that. Not only, you know, the insights and analytics pieces and the reporting pieces, you could drill down, you could drill up. And so, you know, this consolidation area is one that's top of mind. Augmentation with leading edge technologies. A perfect example of that would be in Findem CRM. You could choose between writing your own campaigns or leveraging ChatGPT to write them for you. And I've seen some good and some not so good with ChatGPT so far, but for things like this, it's actually quite impressive. And so just those gained efficiencies through consolidation and augmentation with better technologies, that's definitely something worth looking into. And of course, I'm an evangelist for Findem, but you know, there are lots of technologies out there, spot technologies that can drive efficiencies in certain specific things. But you know, I want you to think farther and broader, because consolidating at some point is going to be something you want to do.
Right. And I think that kind of hits on the other points. I'll just kind of walk through those. So number two, align people, processes, and product. So making sure that all those things are working together. We talked about building the future now by taking a good look at the tech stack and making sure that what's in there is working for you. And if it's not working, look at consolidation. So there are fewer tools that people have to go to. And then again, reduce the number of places recruiters have to go to fill a role. If they can do one search and get data and information from many places, that really saves them a lot of effort. And finally, don't get too caught up in the present. You know, I think we want this to be a hopeful message that we believe that there's great things to come, and that leaders who really start thinking about what could be different in the future today are going to be kind of best set up for tomorrow. So Chris, I want to get to our questions because we only have about 5 minutes left. So I'm just going to kind of do a rapid fire.
Let's do it.
On these. So we had someone ask, interested in learning more about interconnectivity between SaaS TA products. And is it possible to use AI to automate tools like Google Calendar, Greenhouse Scheduling, LinkedIn Recruiter, are there no code tools that allow those to work together? And I think what we talked about is kind of find them as a layer on top of some of those things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not aware of, if you find out one, please let me know. I'm not aware of a no-code tool that connects every single thing. When I was in much larger organizations with much more resources, we were able to connect a lot of dots together, but I wouldn't say that we were able to connect the whole end-to-end thing. And it was, it wasn't necessary. It was resource intensive. Let's put it that way.
I think the next question was, what is the long-term solution? So hiring, that companies are having a hard time, like you spend all this time and effort getting people in, but keeping them is so tough. And I would say that one of the things we see is that I think when you're matching attributes, so you're really looking at what motivates a person and where they've come from as much as what they've put on their resume. I think that is going to bring in a better, stronger match. Someone who, is actually motivated to be in a company like you have right now. That's why we see a much higher response rate in emails, outreach emails, because we're sending it to a better calibrated group of people who are maybe more motivated. I'm going to just
Karen, the one thing I would add to that is, again, this is a tool. The foundation of a tool is attributes and skills-based profiles. These profiles are way more rich and deep and significant than any profiles you've ever seen. When you have that, and guess what? The people in your company are in this subset of 750 million people. When you know about them, more things than they will tell you, but they're willing to tell the universe on social media and all these other places. You don't need to rely on user contribution to know what skills and attributes your people have. And so you could leverage these profiles in many, many different ways.
And that kind of brings up, I think, our last question here around if LinkedIn has stopped allowing skills in public profiles, how do we find that? And I think this is a great place to talk about, Findem is really drawing from a set of 100,000 different 100,000, I'll say that again so everybody catches that, different data resources. And then our AI technology is about validating and calibrating across those AI technologies, across those different data sources. So someone may not have a particular language on their resume or their profile, but they've got lots of GitHub commits in that language. And we'll find that person and say, hey, this person is actually validated experience here. So that's a little bit of what we can, let me just pass it off to Chris for a quick closing statement. And then
hey, look, we're all being asked to do more with less. I think we just need to be smarter about whatever we get. and these tools are coming, they're maturing, and they're coming into a place to where they're going to be really, really helpful for current issues that you're trying to solve, but preparing for the future. Tech stack modernization, especially HR and TA. Let's stop the SaaSness madness, people.
I love that. Well, to wrap up, I just want to thank you, Chris, for joining us and working through the technical difficulties. I so appreciate your time and your insights for everyone here. We'll be sharing a copy of this recording out, so look for that email next week. We'll also have a link to the report itself, as well as a link to part 2 of this conversation. We'll be speaking with Brett Coyne, who recently left his position as a senior VP of Global Talent, I believe, at Okta. So he'll be joining us on May 4th, and look for a registration for that one. In the meantime, if you'd like to reach out to me or Chris with any questions, feel free. You can also
more than questions, feedback, like call us out, tell us where you think the assumptions that we've made or the data that we have is not in alignment with what yours is. Please, let's make this two-way.
Absolutely. And I think to that point, we'd love to do this survey again and hone in on the questions, make them better, make the content better, and have more people taking the survey. So we'll be doing that, probably try to do that again next November. And so absolutely, that feedback on what we could have said or done differently is absolutely welcome. I think we lost one question, but there was one about the US versus Canada. And Findem, I would say that the main limitation is language, and it's English. So I believe, and we'll have to double check that, but I believe most of the data that we're gathering and the profiles that we're showing and our UI is in English. So that would be fine for Canada. And we do have clients in Canada using Findem.
I think the only country that I've heard we have challenges is in China.
Got it. Great. Well, thank you again, everyone. And we look forward to hearing from you and wish you a great Q1. And hopefully you'll all be able to hit your targets and have a more efficient process going forward. Thank you.